Hello and welcome to Diminishing Returns. It's the Valentine special. My name is Alluring Alan Turing. Joining me as always is Sexy Sol Harris.
Oh, you went for sexy. That was a bit obvious. I would have gone with sumptuous.
Ooh, I like it. Joining me as always is Sumptuous Sol Harris.
Hello.
And joining us as always on our Valentine specials is Calvin.
Oh, I was hoping I was going to get curvaceous or something like that.
Carousing Calvin.
Carousing. Yes, so I like that.
So hang on. This is our Valentine's Day special because we've done a Christmas movie.
Yes, we have.
Oh,
We decided.
yes.
Well, we did. We did an action film for our Christmas special, so we're just one behind. We'll do a sexy film on Halloween. Yes, we did not choose to do Eyes Wide Shut. It was chosen for us by the Patreons, the fine patrons of this.
Yes, this is this Valentine's Day episode tradition is in its 5th year now, I believe.
God.
Yeah, but we started with the 50 Shades of Grey, and so that dealt with the first 3 years because we just did one film each year. And we just sort of like, Valentine, let's do something like erotic thriller kind of nonsense and take the piss.
We hated the films and there wasn't a lot to talk about with them, so we just ended up discussing smut and sex.
And our dating histories.
People seem to like that.
But then what did we do last year? Didn't we let the patrons choose last year as well?
We threw it out to Patreon last year and they didn't understand and they chose a good film, so we ended up doing Boogie Nights, like a real film, instead of a stupid erotic thriller. And we threw it out to Patreon again this year, and they had some excellent choices. Calvin has been canvassing.
Calvin told them to choose Cruising with Al Pacino.
I thought we could have had a great time with that.
They told you to go fuck yourself.
I thought we could have had a really great time with that one as well. Al Pacino going undercover in New York leather gay bars in the 80s, directed by the guy who did The Exorcist. I thought that would have been a great one for us to discuss, but never mind, there's always next year, I suppose.
But the thing with that is, like, which Pacino is it? Because
Al Pacino.
I assume that's too early for Cocaine Chino, isn't it? It's like that's not like, I'm undercover as a gay. It's got to be like
you haven't seen the
I'm a
you haven't seen the clip of him going like dancing in the leather bar, have you? Where he goes full Pacino gay dancing. Well, we might get there eventually because the good voters did pick a film that is probably the most reputable film, or certainly one that's interesting for discussion. Actually,
they picked a proper film again. Yeah, they didn't get it. In fact, I think they actually did get it. If you look at the comments, it seems like they did get it, but they didn't care. They just wanted us to do this film anyway.
Well, I think there's an awful lot to discuss here, which is good.
Oh, God, yeah. I've got a whole page of notes where I've had to scribble all over the top of my notes and so on. I don't doubt we're going to have a really interesting discussion about a film and filmmaking, but we might not have as many discussions about spunking knobs as... we were hoping for.
Oh, I don't know about that. We've got some material.
I'll try and squeeze some in. Oh, that's what she said.
We're doing Eyes Wide Shut. Have we actually said that yet?
So Eyes Wide Shut beat off. Debbie Does Dallas.
Hey.
Showgirls, Cruising.
Oh, Showgirls would have been the choice.
Yeah, that was same here because that's one I've not seen but has been on my to-do list for a long, long time as a fan of Paul Verhoeven. But no, we are doing Stanley Kubrick's final film as a director, and
the one that killed him.
The one that broke up Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman.
A film I had only seen once prior to last night when I rewatched it for this podcast.
Yeah.
I think I'm on record saying Stanley Kubrick is my favourite director of all time. I think when I brought that up a while ago, Calvin scoffed at the idea, like, oh, you don't even like any of his films. And it's like, well, like all of them apart from like 3, I think.
Oh.
Well, do the numbers bear that out, Sol?
On the list, no, he's about 19 on the list. 19th, I believe.
There you go. I mean, you say he's your favourite, but doesn't add up.
Yeah, but he's
scoff at you, sir.
He's also one of the only directors on the list who I've seen the entire body of work of.
All 3 of them? Oh, that was a joke about his limited filmography.
Oh, right. Yeah. How many has he got? He must have about 10 films, right?
He did actually make films in the 60s, like before he just took 10 years off.
Well, yeah, he used to churn them out 2 a year like most people, but it was the last 3 or 4 that were like, 5, 7, 10 years apart. And the biggest gap between his films is, of course, this one, Eyes Wide Shut, and the previous film, Full Metal Jacket, which was a 12-year gap. A huge gap, really, but... he was developing.
Yes, and in that time, he'd turned from a skilled director into a sort of confused, horny old man who just wants to make softcore porn.
Well, we should also start this as well by saying, I'm sure we'll get into the plot and whatnot, but just a little bit on the production history as well first. This film was released in 1999. It started filming in 1996 and shot for an incredibly long time, and Stanley Kubrick died before the film came out. So, whilst it is his last film, is it really his film, basically, is what I'm saying, because there were a good few months.
Oh, yeah. Well,
he delivered his first edit 4
days
days before he died, didn't he? So it feels like that's a good idea of what the film would end up being.
This is something I wanted to talk about, really, because to me, this, like, Warner Brothers swear blind that this is the finished film. He turned it in, he was happy with it. This was the final cut that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman had to sign off a nudity clause in their contract to kind of agree with this version going out. They swear this is the film as it was always intended, but it's clear as day just to watch it that it's not. This feels like a work print of a film.
Yeah, it feels like the film that's going to have 40 minutes.
Yeah, it really does. And I think it's a real shame he never. I mean, that's the other thing, is Kubrick was renowned for, being meticulous and working on things up until not just the day of release, but in the case of The Shining, he was re-editing it after it had come out. There was like a cut that went to cinemas, and then he continued to re-edit it slightly for subsequent releases. And...
I think Tom Cruise said he was still editing it on the set of Eyes Wide Shut. He was tinkering away with it. But yeah, I was going to make that same point about he's notorious for right up until it actually goes out. So the fact that he handed this in 5 months before the release date, something like that, I don't know. There was certainly, the music wasn't completed, the sound effects, the colour correction, there was still a good deal of post work left to be done. So how much is it his? Yeah, he
died 3 months before it came out, so I think that's 3 months solidly he would have been working on it. And I think it's a real shame, because I mean, not to get too much into this, but I think the alternate universe in which Kubrick does finish this film and it's completely what he wants it to be, I think it would be a contender for one of my, if not my favourite Kubrick film. There's enough here that if it kind of got tightened up and so on, I think it would be among the best, in my opinion. And I say that as a big fan.
I mean, I agree that it could be better, but I think its best cut is still going to be pretty mediocre. Not to show my opinion too soon. Because I just thought, I mean, I wasn't convinced by any of it, really.
Well, I just think we should talk about knobs and cocks again a bit. I feel things are getting a bit too highbrow, arty-farty, so...
Well, are there any cocks in this film?
Well, there's no knobs, is there? Yeah, it's all just tits and a bit of bush.
The male gaze.
Yeah, tell me about it.
And they're doing fellatio stuff with masks on. I don't quite know how that works.
What? Did they? I didn't see any fellatio, because I thought that.
Oh,
myself,
yeah, they are.
They're all wearing full face masks. How are you going to fillet?
There's a point where they walk into a room and there's 2 women 69ing with masks on, which means they're just kind of miming.
Oh yeah,
miming what they're doing.
Right,
but I think it's possible. I mean, you probably just didn't see it. It's possible you saw the infamous toned down edit where they kind of digitally Austin Powers a load of things in front of all the boobs, so you don't see
really
any.
Funny.
No, I definitely didn't. I definitely saw lots of boobs and things. Yeah, not a lot of sex really. For something that was kind of sold as a sexy erotic thriller, even though I don't think that's really what it was meant to be.
It was sold as an erotic thriller, but it obviously had no intention of being a erotic thriller. It's a Kubrick film. It's an adaptation of a book called, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Trom Novelle, I believe, which translates as Dream Story which is an old Austrian
Traum.
book from the 20s, like 1926, something like that.
Yeah, I read about that, and I immediately struck me like, God, this film would have been better if it was sort of a period setting.
Oh, there's elements that don't translate particularly well, and they haven't really...
Yeah.
They've translated them in a kind of superficial way, I think, but not in a kind of cultural way, if that makes sense. But I must say, I think it's pretty clear from how you two have been talking about it, I'm going to be the positive voice defending this film. I think it really does capture a dreamlike quality, a real kind of sense of, I don't know quite what you call it.
Boring?
I don't think we announced... No. I don't think we announced it in any of our proper episodes, but Alan and I have had COVID for like the last 3 episodes of this podcast. We're fine now. But anyway, there was a Diminisode about it. You'd know all about it if you went over to our Patreon. But one of the lingering after effects of it is that I do keep finding every now and then I'll just be outside on a walk or something, and I will just get really spaced out and be like disassociating from my body almost. It's very strange, and this film had that quality to it where it was just kind of like, whoa man, trippy.
Whereas I have been healthy and of sane mind this entire pandemic, and
so you were able to see this film for what it truly was.
Exactly, yes. I think just to sort of, we'll get into the plot, I'm sure. The very top line of it, if you don't mind me sort of doing the elevator pitch, is that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman are a very well-to-do married couple, and they talk about their, dreams of infidelity and whatnot, and this kind of spurs Tom Cruise on to basically just walk the streets and encounter. He gets into different situations with people who want sex from him. He's trying to get into a sex party, all these kinds of things. What Alan said about there not being much sex in the film, I think that's true literally. Like, we're not seeing people having sex on screen all that much, but I think every single scene does revolve around sex in some way. Someone wants it, someone's, trying to do something. It's
Tom Cruise spends the entire film with blue balls, pretty much, doesn't he?
Well, yes.
Yeah, at no point does he have sex or any real intimate connection with anyone.
Yeah, he's constantly about to have sex and then, changes his mind or something interrupts him or whatever. Yeah, he's clearly a very lonely man.
If this was played as a farcical comedy with, like, Reg Varney to get his end away, it'd be great.
It's funny you say that, but it actually was intended to be a farcical sex comedy at one point in its development.
With Kubrick directing.
Yeah. Stanley Kubrick was really interested in decades earlier. He'd been wanting to adapt this book for a long time, and he was really interested in making it a real kind of romp sex comedy adaptation of the book, probably with Peter Sellers or someone in the lead. Who knows? If I'm going to look it up, because I know he was planning it for an actor. Steve Martin was the actor that Kubrick wanted to make it as a sex comedy. And prior to that, he did want to make it as a Woody Allen starring film as well. But I don't know if it would have been a sex comedy with Woody Allen. It would make sense, but...
Yeah, if you go back far enough, back when Woody Allen was doing kind of the stupid comedies.
He obviously had a lot of ideas in mind. Because it's weird, because it's not a comedy at all. There's absurd aspects to it that a certain kind of person might find funny, but honestly, I think it's it's a relationship drama and a bit of a thriller. I think it gets quite scary, certainly creepy in places. It gets into real horror territory and then quickly gets out of it again, and then ultimately it's just about a dwindling relationship. And
well, let me read to you a note I made quite early on, actually, which I think sums up the film pretty well. Just a bunch of posh drunk cunts fannying about.
Yeah,
and that's basically the film. And I wrote that when they're at the first party. They're not even the sex party. They're just fannying about with Sidney Pollack.
There was a lot of stuff in that kind of opening scene which is interminably long. I think it's about 15-20 minutes.
Yeah. This is why I think if Kubrick had been able to sort this shit out, because I find the opening 40 minutes or so pretty dull. But for me, the film
exactly the same. Yeah. Once the kind of mystery element, the thriller element kicks in, it is a lot more engaging.
For me, the film kicks into gear in the scene where Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman are decompressing after the party. I don't really care about anything at the party or any of that, but I find the interplay between them and this kind of raw confession. I think this film is a really interesting, very honest expression of a lot of feelings and things that people all have to some degree or another. But
are you talking about the conversation where they're smoking weed and then she kind of confesses to this kind of infidelity thing? So, well, I mean, to be honest with you, like you're saying, that's like a raw expression of like them discussing their feelings or whatever. But it's just like I don't understand. I appreciate that I'm not exactly a faithful monogamist here, but the idea that you can't even fantasize about other people, you're not even allowed to be attracted to other people, is that a thing that people do in relationships?
I dated...
Absolutely, yes. And also, it goes beyond that. It's not just that she's like, oh, I saw this guy and he was really hot and I wanted to fuck him, which would be, that would be grounds for a huge row with most couples, I think. But it's not even that she says that. She says, I would have, like, if he had
left you,
said, come and spend the night with me, I would have given up everything, you included, my entire life, to do it. And that's
that was definitely a kind of fuck you,
a horrible thing to say to someone, but it's also incredibly raw and honest. And I find this particular scene really wonderful, actually. It really evokes, for me, it evoked the very best of the kind of Dogma 95 school of filmmaking. When I was watching it, I was thinking nothing is happening, but I'm utterly captivated in this interplay between these two, and it reminds me of the film The Hunt, the Mads Mikkelsen film, which I watched fairly recently, which is the same thing from that Dogma 95 school. Festen, all these other kind of films where there's no guns, there's no big obvious stuff happening. It's just people talking, but they're creating really compelling drama. Now, I appreciate that from the sounds of it, it wasn't particularly compelling for either of you, but I really got a lot out of it.
My problem with that, I guess, is first of all, I can't relate to it at all because it's just these people live in a way that I just don't at all. But also, I was really put off by the fact that Nicole Kidman acting stoned, probably the worst thing I've ever seen. And also, and judge this as you will, I got from that scene that she had slept with this other guy, and then she was saying, and if he'd said, I would have left you, but he just went off. I did not get that was just a fantasy. I thought she was confessing to a full-on kind of affair or one-off affair, which totally. And I only found out that wasn't the case when I was reading the Wikipedia article afterwards, because I was finding out about the production, but also the plot was there, and I was like, oh, she didn't actually cheat on him, and that completely recontextualized his response to it.
Yeah, I think it's far more interesting that she didn't.
Yeah, I do as well.
I don't know how you got that, to be honest, unless you were just assuming
because I wasn't paying attention because I was bored. Is probably why. But it does change things, because his response of going out there and kind of wanting to have his own sort of little discovery thing, sexual kind of. I don't think he particularly wants to have an affair, but he just wants to feel like he could.
Yeah.
And then so that really makes a lot more sense, because actually his response on a kind of an emotional level, I felt like wasn't enough. Like I would be like, oh, well, I might leave you then, that's never really contemplated. So it actually helped me when I found that out.
Yeah. Oh, completely. But, I think it's a very important detail, yeah.
But she's just saying anything she can to annoy him and get into a fight, so it doesn't mean anything. And then it's like, but I've seen people in these kinds of relationships, and they get drunk, shout at each other, and then the next day they're just like back together again, like never happened. And like that, it's... I honestly, like, just that scene particularly with her, the way she was behaving in that, I just thought, well, can you imagine being in a relationship with this woman? I don't know how quickly I would get out of that relationship. what an awful piece of work she is.
I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of paperwork to do with the Church of Scientology if you want to get out of one of these things. It's quite a lot of work. I think we should touch on Nicole Kidman for a second, because I don't think we've done a film with her in before. We've done Aquaman,
You know what?
if that counts.
Interestingly enough, I kind of had the similar thought, I guess, that you're going to here, where when I was watching this, I was like, where was Nicole Kidman in her career at this point? I looked it up, and like all the stuff before this, it is just kind of like, you know, she's not a major star. It's just, you know, things here and there. She was in a Batman film. And like she's there. She's a presence, but not like a bankable star. And then, like, the couple of years that come after this, she did Moulin Rouge, The Others, The Hours, which was like the real kind of credibility one. But that all just came in like the 2-3 years after this. You know, maybe this was a film that kind of turned it. Because I think she was just Tom Cruise's wife before that, wasn't she? Maybe when she left him, she started doing better projects.
I think she's similar to Angelina Jolie in that her star power is predominantly not about the films that she's been involved in. But she's obviously done a lot of very well-regarded performances and films that give her that credibility to kind of back it all up. But I mean, I know, certainly going back to uni, maybe your opinion's changed, Alan, but I know you used to think Nicole Kidman was a terrible, terrible actor. And that's an opinion I certainly used to hold. I think Eyes Wide Shut, when I first watched it, was the first time I'd ever seen her in something where I didn't think this is absolutely terrible. And I have since seen a few films like Dogville, where I'm like, okay, she's okay. But I will say, like, I've never seen Nicole Kidman in a film where I've come away thinking, wow, she's incredible.
Wow, she's great.
At best, she gets away with it.
Yeah, I definitely thought at the end of this film, where they're having like the emotional denouement of the whole thing, I really liked her there. I thought she did a great job.
I think this is the best performance I've seen her give ever. I'll say that much.
But all the beginning stuff where she's dancing with like that Ricardo Montalban type, or when she was just getting stoned, like totally terrible, absolutely awful. But at the end, when she was crying a bit, it was all right. It was pretty.
She can't really do the drunk and the high acting very well, can she? I had that same thing when she was dancing around with the guy at the party. I think a lot must be said as well of the fact that they were a married couple when they were filming this, when it was released, and that will have certainly lent the film a certain amount of publicity. Like this, you know, this A-list Hollywood married couple in a an erotic film and all that kind of stuff. I did read something. Quite a funny article about how some people are convinced that this was just Kubrick's way of messing with Tom Cruise and basically derailing his career. Because when you think about it, like, both these actors were in places where Tom Cruise had done Mission. Well, Tom Cruise was very well established, and Nicole Kidman was just sort of had that stardom coming up. But this was really trapping them in Pinewood Studios for like 3 years nearly to film one thing. And Tom Cruise had to like push back Mission Impossible 2 for this, and there's all this stuff about he was like saying, can you just please tell us how long this is going to take to shoot? It doesn't matter how long it takes, we just need to know for our next projects. And Stanley Kubrick would of course not do that. So the lengths they went to, obviously Kubrick doesn't like flying, but they just recreated streets of New York on sound stages in London.
Yeah, down to measuring the streets with a tape measure and exactly recreating them in Pinewood.
But do you know what, though? It does create an odd effect because it looks really good, but it also just doesn't
look like New York.
Real. And so but I guess that adds to the dreamlike quality that they're going for. But I don't know if it's deliberate.
There's a lot of weird things going on that I think really do add to that kind of ethereal vibe of this film. The biggest one for me is the use of colour, which I found absolutely fascinating on the repeat viewing, because obviously it's not finished in terms of the colour grade and everything, but there is a clear use of a very distinctive colour palette throughout this film, where blue obviously means something and red obviously means something. And I think you could look into other colours having a bit of meaning to a lesser extent, but blue and red are both used incredibly prominently, which is the same as Aladdin. I think in our Aladdin episode we touched on how blue is used as a kind of safe colour and red is evil and danger.
That's
throughout
the horny
that film.
colour, isn't it?
Yeah, so the obvious...
Whenever Aladdin and Jasmine are getting together, it goes bright.
Well, that's it. The obvious thing here would be that red is, you know, lust and sexual desire, and blue is a kind of kick in the dick, and you're not into
Blue balls.
Blue is the feeling immediately after you've come and you just want to like be done with it all. And the thing is, it doesn't work because the colours seem to swap around throughout the film. It kind of starts one way, like that scene we were just talking about is all red, but then Nicole Kidman stood in the doorway and it's all blue behind her. But then later on, when Tom Cruise tracks down this weird sex cult party, the gate of the building is blue, which is a very unusual colour for a gate, which is, you know, obviously playing into this whole colour scheme thing. But surely it should be red.
It's a foretelling of the blue balls at the end of the night.
Well, Kubrick was obviously, you know, I think we spoke about this in the Clockwork Orange episode of the show that we've done, but he was obsessed with subconsciously fucking around with people's heads. And he read loads of books on it, and that's why A Clockwork Orange has, like, intentional continuity issues with, like, the glasses and the food and stuff on the table, because he was intentionally trying to disorientate the viewer. And I think he's doing a similar thing here. I think he's trying to draw attention to the disparity between lust and, you know, a kind of familiarity, a kind of boredom, but he doesn't want it to be that simple. He's also trying to create this kind of weird confusion, and I don't know, I think it's really
It's a perfect excuse for any artist, isn't it? Oh, I was being shit deliberately. It's meta art.
Well, is it shit? Would it be better if, you know, it was obvious as hell if he went and the gate was red instead of blue and it just stayed that way? Right? Like, it's obvious every single time. Honestly, if you watch the film with the blue-red thing in mind, it's not subtle. It's clear as day. Like, oh, there's red. Like the prostitute's door is red, but then the inner door is blue once he goes through that outer door. It's this
Well,
weird.
he's still at the horny stage when that's just the next door. It's like what's happened in the vestibule that's suddenly changed it.
Well, just outside the door is a blue pram, and it's in that bit where he has the discussion with that her friend who kind of, it all gets very awkward, and you know, he goes into her room intending to have sex with her, and then it ultimately doesn't happen. But this is my point, is it's confusing. It adds to this idea of sexual confusion, and is something actually sexy? Because that party, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but the sex party in the film is the least sexy thing I've ever seen in my life. It's not titillating, and I can't imagine Kubrick was that far removed from his humanity at this point that he thought this was sexy and what people were into.
Well, I would completely believe that Kubrick has no idea what sex is, really, or why it works, or why people feel sexual feelings, and he just understands the concept of a nude woman. Yes. People like nude women, right? Okay, put some nude women in there. That's sexy. Tell them not to move sometimes, or tell them when they're doing sex to be really over-the-top, stylized movements of sex. That it looks like they're pretending to have sex.
What do you mean that's what I look like when I'm...
There's a lot of head banging.
Yeah. Like, it's like the scene from Wayne's World when they listen to Queen.
Well, I think that's a very generous analysis of the colour scheme there, Sol. Well done.
I just found it fascinating, and I'm adamant that it's intentional.
The idea of Kubrick as a storyteller, because he really isn't, like, or I don't feel like he is anyway, and I feel like that's at play here. If this could be a really nice, tight little erotic thriller story with maybe a few scenes added here and there, like, it could work, but I think the thing that I like about Kubrick, like, I don't really know if I go to Clockwork Orange or The Shining for the story as such, but there's just a whole vibe to them, a creepy, eerie, slightly funny vibe that just really works. So even when nothing's much really happening, like Danny's just rolling through the corridors of the hotel in The Shining, I'm still getting something out of it. Here, I don't get anything out of Tom Cruise pacing the streets. It's just...
I mean, I kind of agree with you. I do not think of Kubrick as a writer, although he did do a lot of writing. He's a director first and foremost, in my opinion. And yeah, I agree, because The Shining is one of his films I don't particularly like, but I think it's incredible in how it creates a tone and an atmosphere and a vibe. And I think the same is true of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I don't particularly care for. But I think sometimes he just latches on to an excellent story, and I don't think it's his eye for narrative or character particularly, but he's often working with strong source material. But I think, for me it works here because he's bringing that Kubrick energy and artistry to what I personally find to be a very... I don't think this film should be... I don't think the best version of this film is an erotic thriller. I think it's a really intimate, interesting character study. And I think that that's more or less there in the film we have, with all that kind of Kubrickian tone and energy surrounding it. So for me, that's why it works.
Well, I think that might be my problem, because I don't think of Kubrick when I think of intimate relationship. I don't think of him as someone who really understands
completely
humans.
Yeah. He's a cold
and I think
and
I think that a lot of the human drama is coming from, Tom Cruise will obviously have had a big hand. He was a megastar at the time, and he will have had a big hand in sort of his portrayal, certainly, and Nicole Kidman as well. I think they're both bringing a lot to the table, and maybe that's my disconnect, because I don't feel like they're being observed by someone who really understands the human condition. And I think that works fine in something like A Clockwork Orange or The Shining or maybe
Full Metal Jacket. All these films are about psychopaths who kill people. Basically.
Well, yeah.
All those films just have people who lose their humanity. That's what all these films are about.
Yeah. That's it, isn't it? Yeah, you've really... Yeah, that helps me make sense of it in my mind, actually. Whereas here, there isn't that. It's like Christopher Nolan doing something I can't feel much for these people. And if that's the point, then it just doesn't work for me then, I guess.
We've done a lot of film talk here. Let's do some sex talk. Okay, so guys, let me ask you this then. What if your partner was like, look, let's fuck around. Let's, see other people. We can do it together, or we can go off and do it alone, with someone else. Nothing emotional. It's just sex. What about that? Would you just be like, would that be totally off the table?
I guess it depends on the context. I have a hard time and I say this, I've got friends who are couples who are not in a monogamous relationship, and I've spoken to them about how it works, and it seems to work for them. I think for me, maybe I'm just not that sexually driven a person for me to care enough, because it seems like an awful lot of effort. And, I know that couples have to set up certain rules and things like that. And that if you're getting into that kind of admin, that just immediately kills any kind of passion for me. But, I don't know. But like I say, I have, plenty of couple friends who are in those kinds of relationships, and it really works. So I don't know how...
I don't want to cast any sort of judgment at all, but I will say from my time being brought in as the other man in a couple of instances, you never got the sense that it was a happy relationship that was going to last. It always felt like this is a kind of
desperate attempt,
last hurrah, a last attempt to make something work,
spark something going. Yeah. I know what you mean. I do understand what you're saying there, Calvin. The polyamorous people I know, it's all about these rules and you do this, you don't do that. And they have names for everything. And
I can't fucking stand it.
It's fuck everybody, fuck each other, and just shut up.
Did I ever tell you about the girl I went on a series of dates with? Who I must have got into this, where the first date was to a rope bondage lesson.
Oh yeah.
Good. What?
She was. This must be on a previous Valentine's Day episode, right?
We've definitely talked about it, Sol. I don't know if Calvin was there at the time.
In case it wasn't, I went on a date with someone who looked exactly like Amy Adams but younger.
Nice.
And
you met them on Tinder, right, or something like that? So you didn't really know them.
So yeah, didn't know them. First date, and they basically said, "I've got this thing booked in on Friday. It's a surprise, but you should come along. That should be the thing." And I was like, "Okay." And they were like, "Right, well, I'm not telling you what it is." But then, like, on the day,
Wear some loose-fitting clothes.
it all shifted, and she was like, right, okay, so I need your consent, and I need to make sure you're okay with this.
Oh my God.
And she told me what it was, and it was this rope, the art of rope tying, whatever the proper word is, class, which is like supposedly not sexual, but obviously sexual. Like, you know, you go to a warehouse with a load of stripper poles and things for people who do it as exercise, and you know, I think she found the thing on FetLife, which isn't something I've ever dabbled with, but you know, I think FetLife is I think it's a social network or an app. I've never.
It's like it's kind of like just fetish Facebook, basically. And you can have a profile on there, and you can join groups that are like, you know, local groups. So you would be in the, you know, where do you live? Hammersmith or Wimbledon or something?
Yes.
You could like join the Wimbledon swingers group or something like that, and then you'd get like updates like, hey, we're having a swingers thing on the 13th of October. Come down.
Oh, I see.
You know, so you can kind of connect with other people and all that sort of stuff.
Basically, long story short, she just really annoyed me because she was obsessed with like consent to an annoying degree. It was like, look, like, I've made it very clear at this point that I am up for, you know, essentially anything. But yet she made me do a thing she called the consent game one night, where it was God. You have to it was basically like truth or dare, but you have to say like, I would like to do this. Do you consent? Yes, I would like to do that. And it was just like, what is...
Yeah, I can't be doing
Was
that.
she working through issues? Like, was consent...
Oh,
was it kind of like a kink, or...
No, it was... She's definitely... I mean, she'd like...
Well, let's not get too dark.
Let's not get too dark, but she'd gone off to India. She'd like filled up her chi or something, whatever the equivalent is in India.
Eat, pray, love.
Living in India for a bit. That had allowed her to be able to reach orgasm, which she wasn't capable of doing prior to that. It was a whole thing, and it was all very odd. And the whole thing fell apart when she sort of revealed that she doesn't do vaginal intercourse, which came out of like, you know, because all this other stuff was happening, and she was kind of like, you know, what would you like to do with all the consent game? And I was like, well, you know,
let's get busy.
Sex. We've already had.
Lay down. I'll sort of wriggle around.
We've already had sex. Well, no, I obviously, when I say sex, I obviously mean penis and vagina intercourse. Well, she got really angry that like most people don't acknowledge that sex includes things other than, you know, vaginal intercourse. And it's like, well, but I mean, of course, oral sex is a type of sex, but when someone says sex, it's, you know,
I did not have sexual relations. I accidentally did a Hank Hill impression. That was supposed to be Bill Clinton.
I did date someone who, just going back to what we were talking about earlier, because I was going to say this then, just about the whole, you know, some people getting annoyed if, you know, if they potentially think that their partner might be even thinking about having sex with someone else. I did date someone, this is going back years ago now, but he was like... He was very adamant that if you are in a relationship with someone, you cannot look at porn, because if you are watching porn, then you are imagining yourself with the people, which I disagreed with wholeheartedly.
I know, it's absurd. It's ridiculous.
But is that a common thing? Has that come up for you as well, Saul?
It's a very common thing, from what I can gather. I don't know if you've seen the film Don John, the directorial effort from Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but that is entirely about that. It's it's a film where Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets into a relationship with Scarlett Johansson, who's like the hottest babe he's ever seen. He's doing a kind of Boston accent throughout. I can't do it, but it's very odd. Anyway, the whole film is like he's obsessed with porn and he can't give it up even when he's like involved with women. And, you know, he has lots of real sex with real women, but he still loves his porn. And she finds out and makes him give it up, but obviously he doesn't give it up. He just says he's giving it up, and but it's
I think that's slightly different. I think if you've kind of got a bit of an obsession with it and it's a problem, then that's different to just someone going, what, you can't look at porn when you've got me.
The film doesn't present it as that. The film presents it as him being perhaps obsessed with it, But she doesn't know that. She only she finds out that he's, had a wank one day, and that's like the cause for the argument. She doesn't know that he's obsessed with it. And ultimately the film, I watched it kind of thinking, oh, it's going to come out on this kind of anti-porn, don't lie to each other message. But ultimately, it's more of he basically gets over the breakup and realizes that she's being completely unreasonable in expecting him to change for her like that. When, and that her obsession with rom-coms is, every bit as bad as his obsession with porn, because it's all living in a fantasy world and everything. So I was actually quite impressed with the film. But I think it's quite common. I've certainly encountered that myself.
Shall we talk about orgies then while we're on?
Sweet, yeah, let's do it.
I do kind of want to lean into talking about that because I think that's probably the most famous sequence in this film. And it's certainly probably the most interesting aspect of the film, that whole story regarding this Tom Cruise's character through a friend of his who he's talking to let slip that he's
a
pianist, yes, and he has to be blindfolded, and one instance the blindfold sort of slipped and he caught some sights of a lot of naked people, and he said it was really something else.
He tells him, I've just been doing these weird gigs lately for this weird company, and it's bizarre, like some of the stuff, but it's really secretive and exclusive and blah, 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 blah. And the blindfold slipped off once.
But I like how he says, like, I've seen some things in my time, but whoa, this was something else. It's like, oh, yes, there's definitely going to be some horse fucking going on. There's going to be...
Well, that was it.
It's going to be
so tame.
Filth.
He gets there and
people strung up by their necks. It's going to be great.
Because we are coming to this as well. Yeah, I mean, even 50 Shades of Grey, all of those that we looked at, I think we may have commented on the tameness of the sexual scenes in those films as well. But this is sort of like... but this was still an NC-17 or something, wasn't it? It was still very shocking for the time.
I mean, it is really tame because ultimately it is just lots of naked people and some simulated sex, or, the characters are actually having sex in some instances. I will say, I think it's remarkably creepy, this whole sequence. I think it gets really quite unnerving in places. And this leads me on to something. Are masks a complete and utter boner killer for you guys?
Yep.
Did you say mosques?
No, masks. I mean, mosques don't do it for me either.
Let's not get into controversial topics here.
Basically, masks come up. These kind of Venetian masks are very commonplace in the world of porn. And sex, I guess, in general. A lot of people kind of seem to... As far as I can gather, a lot of people seem to think they're kind of a sexy way to be anonymous if you don't want to, show your face or whatever. But, like, for me, I'm not a huge fan of glasses on a woman, but a mask, it's like 10 pairs of glasses at once. It just instant turn off. Everything about this orgy scene is so devoid of sexuality for me. It's just so unsexy, profoundly unsexy, and it's the masks. They're just not...
I don't know about that. I think the masks have some kind of historical relevance in terms of, like, they were once used for genuine anonymity, like masquerade balls.
Well, they are here in this film still.
Fool around and stuff. I don't know if it's necessarily the masks that makes it unsexy. I think it's just everything.
In this film, some of the masks are, like, intentionally off-putting and creepy looking as well. It's like, why are you wearing a mask with, like, a tear coming down its face and a sad frown? it's really or why are you wearing, like, a plague doctor mask from the Middle Ages? That's so unnerving. It's not...
Yeah, but that was, like, one of the security guys, wasn't it? So that's okay.
This is it. Like, some masks can be, like, a superhero cowl or something like that can be quite, Zorro, a bank robber.
This is what I mean. That for me is still incredibly off-putting.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm the only one of us who's actually been to a sort of masked orgy, right?
Oh, I didn't realize it was masked.
Safe in saying?
Yeah, I didn't know it was masked.
One of them was. I mean, I think I talked about this last year, so I won't go into it too much. But yeah, I went to one that was like, it was a masquerade thing. Everyone was
green. They kept shouting, "Smoking!"
Yeah, and it was. I mean, it doesn't help because you're meeting strangers that you are going to be quite intimate with, and it's just like you can't even see their face. Never mind, like anything about their personality or what they might be up to, like what they might like and all that. But as soon it's like everyone's wearing a mask, and it's like okay, and like there was a show, there was like a burlesque kind of cabaret show thing, and as soon as that was over, it's like okay, go through that room. There's an orgy.
Buffets next door.
Yeah, sausage rolls, and then you just take your mask and your clothes off. And that's it, because you can't fuck in a mask. Like, and I'm not talking. These weren't full face masks. It was just your classic kind of domino mask, I guess. The you kind of just the eyes and the nose and all that.
I'll tell you who can fuck in a mask: the Mandalorian, because he's never allowed to take his mask off, is he, Calvin? The Mandalorian?
No, but he finds a way to do it in a few episodes.
Well, obviously he must eat and drink in secret.
Yes, well, he does. We see it in the show.
What, him eating and drinking?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I haven't finished season 2 yet. So
oh, no, it's in season 1. He goes to the...
Oh, I wasn't paying attention.
Those people that have those prawn...
She uses a straw.
But he must fuck with the mask on.
Well, we've not seen that.
He's not allowed to take the armor off, but I'm assuming he has to kind of open the fly, like zip the fly down.
I think it's more of like a monk... Well, I don't think people have sex in Star Wars anyway, and if they do, it's always sort of off screen and...
With their sister.
Yes.
Baby Yoda was delivered by a stork, wasn't he? They don't procreate.
Yes. Well, I just on this orgy scene again, because like I said, I think it is one of the more memorable bits of the film. Again, like everything in this film, it goes on for so long, and I think I would have found this music score. They have this kind of piano, like very minimalist score.
Ding, ding,
yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
I think I might find that very effective if it were not done to the nauseum that it is, like Sol is quite effectively demonstrating here. But did it bother either of you?
No, I was very aware of it. It felt like when you watch a Hans Zimmer film that's, with Christopher Nolan now, and you just, like, you're very aware of the music and how much thought and, mathematical calculation has gone into the music. It doesn't just wash over you. So, yeah, I was very aware of it in that sense, and, like, okay, I know exactly what you're doing. But it didn't bother me. I think it worked for me in the way it was intended, largely. But I do see how it could really, really fuck someone off if they weren't in the mood for it. Alan, just out of interest, when you went to the orgy, what was the password?
They didn't have a password. You just had to book and then give your name at the door. It wasn't a secret Illuminati orgy. It was just
so your password was Alan.
Yeah. What name are you booked? 2 for Alan. Thank you. Table for 2.
Okay, I mean, look, we've talked about Nicole Kidman. What about Tom Cruise? I know we've done Mission Impossible on this podcast before, but I don't think we really got into the man, the enigma, Tom Cruise.
He must have been wearing something on his shoes in that dancing scene with Nicole Kidman, because they were the same height, and that is not real.
You know what I loved? Talking about the height, actually. Just a little detail. There's a scene early on. He's a doctor in this film, Tom Cruise. And there's a scene early on where he goes to a patient and the guy's dead. He's been called out by the guy's daughter. Is that right? And
yeah, this is obviously a patient. He's been looking after him for a while. He's finally died. And so the daughter says...
And she throws herself at him and he turns it down. And it's,
Yeah, in a very odd scene that doesn't play, really.
I think what you're saying, it doesn't play because he would have banged her.
No, I'm just saying, I don't know. We needed more context for that relationship for that to make any sense.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It was that scene that made me think, this felt very Lynchian. That scene particularly, but the film in general, I think they had a kind of Lynchian quality, and I think it was because it was boring and didn't make sense. That's probably what it was.
He goes to her place. She throws herself at him. He kind of rejects it. He's mature about it, and just says, "Look, we barely know each other, and like you're grieving.
You're clearly an emotional wreck."
But then what I love is her husband turns up, because he's coming home. And the guy they've cast looks exactly like a kind of Tom Cruise stuntman, like a bargain bin Tom Cruise. But he's arguably more attractive. He's significantly taller than Tom Cruise, and it's the only time I've ever really been aware of that in a film. And I think it's quite unusual that Tom Cruise will allow himself to be filmed in a way where he looks so much shorter than another man. And I just found it really interesting because this guy, Thomas Gibson, who plays the guy, he's called Carl. He looks like, you know that episode of Friends where David Schwimmer plays Russ, the rebound version of Russ? He looks like that to Tom Cruise. It's really uncanny. And I just found that fascinating because that's absolutely Kubrick making a comment about the fact that this woman is throwing herself at basically the same thing as her husband, but she's acting out, and it's not about what these men are. Like, arguably he's the inferior man, he's shorter, but...
Do you judge all men by
I have a couple of points I want to make. First of all, perhaps personality comes into this as opposed to just height.
Oh, but they look so similar. It has
again, that's
to
nothing
be
to do with their
purpose.
personality, really, is it?
Saul's judge of men is just Richard Keel as Jaws is the peak of masculinity.
Is he not? Absolute beefcake.
But I made the same observation, actually, Saul. Yeah, I noticed it. Because I also thought that the woman looked a bit Nicole Kidman-ish, like, you know, a bit of a kind of knockoff Nicole Kidman. So I thought there was going to be some point to that. But then the scene just kind of goes away and there isn't actually any point to that other than he could if he wanted to, kind of thing.
I think if anything,
the point is there. They're showing it, and that is the point, you know? All these characters have options that, you know, they clearly presented to them, they contemplate, they don't ultimately go with, and I just think it's a really interesting thing. You know, we often talk about the idea of films as a collage of ideas, and I just think it's a really nice thing that plays into the vibe of the film as a whole and what it's doing.
Well, I took it as kind of, this is, you know, if we think of this as a hero's journey, you turn down the the quest at the first instance, and this is all kind of building up to getting him to a point where he is actually going to seriously consider cheating on his wife and go to the prostitute. Because preceding this, we've had Nicole Kidman's whole dream speech about fantasizing about going off with this guy, and then we have this, and then I think the next scene is where he's on the streets and he gets shouted at by the college guys, and his masculinity is affected by that. So I just took it as these are the three things in this sequence that bring us to a point where he is willing to go and cheat on her. Because I think the very next scene is where he goes to he meets the prostitute.
Yeah, but this woman is not going, oh, do you fancy a quick shag? She's like, oh, I love you, let's run away together.
Well, exactly. It's much more of a, you know, up your entire existence and run away with me is very different to lie to your wife.
Exactly. And then the prostitute sort of says, hey, just come up these stairs and let's have a shag. And that's a totally different prospect. And especially in his mentality at that time where he feels like he needs to get one back on his wife or whatever he's thinking.
I mean, another thing throughout this film, Tom Cruise, he's just throwing money about. It's like but it's really like show offy. Like, look how much money I've got. And I really like that. And I think it was a really nice aspect of his character. And about halfway through the film, he kind of stops doing that and seems to swap out for his doctor ID. And instead of like buying everyone off, he starts saying, I'm a doctor.
I loved how he kept flashing his ID like a police badge, like he had it in his wallet, and he's just like, I'm a doctor.
But again, you know, I think that's probably supposed to mean something. I haven't thought about it enough to figure it out.
Because this whole section is like a private detective going around trying to find out information, isn't he? And I quite like this bit. I got much more engaged with the story here.
Well, so he, you know, after he's been in the prostitute's bedroom, and then he's had a chat with his pianist friend, and he gets the address and the password to go and check out this place for himself. He has a scene which I imagine is Calvin's favourite part of the film, although I might be completely wrong in this assumption, where he goes to a costume shop at whatever it is, midnight, and wakes up the owner and you know, has to try and buy a costume, a mask to get into this place.
Am I that predictable?
It's this. And it's this sort of generic Eastern European kind of foreign man who owns the shop now. And halfway through the scene, there's some rustling, and it turns out that the guy's daughter's like brought to. They appear to be Japanese businessmen back for a threesome in his shop, and he gets really
and they're
upset
dressed
with
up in like they've obviously been trying on the costumes and stuff.
It is one of the more sort
very
of
odd.
overtly comedic scenes or I think it's going for that. I think it's a bit sinister later on, where it's very clear that this man is pimping out his daughter, or he's come to some kind of agreement with these guys, which is all because she is underage, isn't she? She's they do make a point of that.
I think Barry Lyndon's in the costume shop, by the way. Was that Barry Lyndon? It looked like him. Nice little Kubrick in joke there, like he does.
Yeah, but it's a weird scene. It's very overtly comedic.
I really enjoy it, but it is completely
in its own, just as a single
I
entity, it's enjoyable and funny. But it doesn't add anything to the whole film, I think. And then, that bit in itself is quite funny. But then the backup where he goes to return the costume, and it transpires that he's come to some sort of arrangement. But not just that, not just like, hey, okay, well, give me some money, I won't call the police. But then it's like, oh, by the way, Tom Cruise, you want to fuck her? You can fuck her if you want. I know you got money. Like that. It's gone from, okay, I can be bought off to, well, I'm actually happy to prostitute my daughter. It's just a weird thing. It doesn't really add anything. I don't think it's. I guess all it's saying is like, hey, sexual degeneracy. Ooh.
Well, that's just it.
It's another subversion of sexual. Something that might be quite sexy in the right context is completely stripped of sexuality and turned into something quite unpleasant and sinister, which is what this film's sort of been doing throughout. And it's after he's just been to the scary orgy scene and threatened, it's...
Well, I did wonder if that was some kind of, the orgy in the middle is kind of the break, and then because everything after that is sort of like he's coming back to people the next day, the next night, and all this kind of thing, and he goes to the prostitutes and he goes there, and I don't know if they're going for some kind of not all is what it seems, or I don't know. I mean, there's obviously the theme of sex runs through pretty much every scene in the film. Every scene someone is wanting sex or on a journey to find it or something like that, so it's all playing into that thematically. I don't know if there's more of a purpose to it than that.
Yeah, when he goes back to the prostitute's flat, it turns out she's tested positive for HIV. It's all like, again, completely like
even in like the Alan Cumming is in a scene in this film as
in the film
as a New York Scottish hotel desk clerk. His accent slips in a couple of times, but even he's very much lusting for Tom Cruise. Like there is that, and I think Tom
is that
Cruise...
what that was supposed to be?
Yeah.
Interesting. My note was Alan Cumming doing something.
No, I think he's quite clearly
sure what he was trying to do.
He's quite clearly by the end,
but he was doing it in a very odd way. I've never seen him act like that before. And
yeah.
Also, for some weird reason, it was like his hair had just been like he'd just got up out of bed and they hadn't done.
He looked just like Pee Wee Herman, didn't he? I've never seen him that young before.
He was about 42 there.
You know who else is in this film?
I do. I know loads of people who are in this film. Got a cast list right here.
Is Cate Blanchett on it?
She's uncredited, surely.
She is uncredited, yeah. She is the voice of the mystery woman at the orgy.
This is the voice of the mystery woman.
And they only came out 2 years ago, I believe, that she was that voice. It was only officially confirmed.
Oh.
It was a mystery long put to bed. Because, Cate Blanchett wasn't a thing back then, particularly, I don't think. I think she was just friends with someone, possibly Nicole Kidman. Apparently the actor couldn't do an American accent, but they needed someone based in London who was around who could come in and do it.
Interesting.
Like a Bond film.
Yeah.
Can we get into the sort of the ending of this plot? Because I definitely got a bit confused here at one point. And again, it might be just because my attention had waned. But So he's at the orgy. He gets found out that he's not supposed to be there. The sort of implication is they're going to give him either a good hiding or they might even kill him. And a mystery woman, goes, "No, I will take his place. Kill me instead." And so we don't quite know what's going on there. And then when he starts sniffing about afterwards, he goes to see the prostitute she's missing, and the implication is, oh, it was her. It was the prostitute at the party, and she did it because he'd been nice to her. He eventually finds out that she's dead. He goes to see the body, and it's her. And it was like, oh yeah, it is. It's the prostitute. And then he goes to see Sidney Pollack, and Sidney Pollack says, "Oh, it's the woman. That's the woman who took the overdose at my party."
At the very start of the film, yeah.
And so for me, I was
Tom Cruise as a doctor was called in to kind of help him with this woman who was having a bad way.
Yeah, and so I was like, hang on, this is a twist. So even Sidney Pollack doesn't quite know what's going on, because it wasn't Mandy, the woman who had the overdose. It was the prostitute, Domino, who was killed. But I don't think it was. Was it actually Mandy in the morgue? And did Tom Cruise know that? Because I didn't register that. And I got a little bit confused about what was going on there. And I thought it was going to be a twist where like even Sidney Pollack doesn't quite know how far this reaches, But then I didn't really get that sense by the end.
I'm pretty sure the woman in the morgue is the woman from the start of the film.
Yeah,
the actress who has an overdose.
I prefer your version of it, Alan, actually. It never really occurred to me. I never thought, yeah.
But because they were both kind of redheadish and just it was just like a naked body on a slab.
Well, I think they've been cast to look similar, I think they're meant to be quite interchangeable people.
You saw her there, you went, oh, it's the woman who had the overdose. That's why she vouched for him, because he was nice to her and sort of saved her life. I guess. And that's how you saw it.
Yeah, and then the society had concocted some kind of, yeah.
Interestingly, though, that overdose scene, so, she has an overdose, and the way he deals with it, I guess this is what doctors do, is he sort of shouts her name until she gives him some response, and sort of slaps her a bit, and then sort of like just goes, oh, she'll be all right in about an hour.
Yeah.
And then he very patronizingly lectures her about drug use.
What else are you going to do? Prescribe her some antibiotics? They're not meant to do that, Alan, if they can avoid it.
Well, no, take her to the hospital, pump her stomach, do something like, or
he's
like
not
give
going
her
to do
some
that, because
kind
then
of
it's going to
whatever.
be a whole. It's going to be a whole scene. He spent enough time with her to ascertain that she'll be okay, left to her own devices, and then he's like, right, she could.
But then
why
then
she could
is
look
she
at me.
so kind of thankful to him? Why is Sidney Pollack so grateful to him? And it's like, well, if she died, we were just like, well, I just got my henchman to get rid of her, so who cares?
Well, Sidney Pollack's thankful because he's like, oh, thank God, I don't have to deal with another, dead stripper in the carpet or whatever.
Yeah, but why even bring the doctor in if you're not going to let him do anything? Like, if you say, like, look, you can't take her to the hospital, so don't do that. What?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know everyone thinks as rationally as you do when they're dealing with a potential dead body in there.
Well, no, I agree with Alan, because if he's really part of a society that would so willingly kill a woman in its tribute instead of Tom Cruise when she sort of sacrifices himself for him, which is a pure formality. There's no reason to really kill her apart from the fact that she's given herself up as tribute. He obviously has a bit of a casual attitude towards killing people, so I agree.
Well, he might not be at the top of the society. He's just like, it's like when Mr. Burns is in the Stonecutters and Lenny outranks him. It's he's part of the society, but that doesn't mean he's in a position where if someone dies in his house in a party, that it's not going to cause implications for his personal life.
Yeah.
We haven't.
And
really
all he does is he goes, oh, my friend's a doctor, let's get him in. It's not like he does very much, really. And I never really got the sense that she was thankful to him for saving her. And
why did she give up her life for him?
Yeah, that's absolutely why.
Well, I don't think it is. I think she's self-destructive and she knows him and she doesn't want harm to come to him, and she is willing to sacrifice her life for him. Well, yeah, I don't think it's as simple as you did me a favor, so now I'm going to do you a favor. I think it's more like my life is not got many prospects for it, and I'm willing to give it up so that you can go on
No,
living.
I think it's you. Well, you saved my life, so I'm going to save yours.
It's totally that. Yeah. It has to be. It can't be anything else other than she's... Yeah, well...
Well, it can be what I just said, which is
which doesn't make any
similar,
sense,
but
but that
nuanced.
makes sense for Kubrick, I guess. So.
That might work if we knew anything about her character whatsoever, other than
Yeah.
she has an overdose at this party and she's a former beauty queen. The what Sidney Pollack says is, look, it was all just pantomime. We did it to scare the shit out of you, and the whole thing was set up. And she comes in at the last minute and saves you, and you have to run away. And then she just had a drug overdose because she was a junkie. And I totally believe that. That is so much more believable than like the alternative. That like I was like, yeah, that makes sense. All this sort of pomp and ceremony is just them fannying about, and it's totally ridiculous. By the way, it's the most sort of pathetic, stonecutters nonsense where they're just like, ooh, look, I've got some incense. Ooh, naked ladies. Ooh, it's just pathetic.
Yeah, but there are these pathetic little clubs that, and by the way. Sue us, Freemasons. Come at us. Let's start some beef with the Freemasons.
No, I totally take it as like he's trying to throw Tom Cruise off the trail, but there definitely is an awful lot of stuff going on with this organization. They gave his friend a black eye earlier on and clearly roughed him up.
Yeah, I think it's intentionally ambiguous though as to what extent.
Yeah.
Like. How far their hand reaches and how far they're willing to go. I think it's intentionally ambiguous because it's kind of creepy and scary not quite knowing, but at the same time it's I mean these societies, I'm sure some listeners will disagree, but certainly I don't believe they hold any kind of real world-changing conspiratorial power.
Well, exactly. It's all just nonsense and dress up and play acting, isn't it?
I think Kubrick was quite into Illuminati sort of stuff, wasn't he?
Was he?
I read that somewhere.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he was very skeptical about the whole thing.
Oh no, he was a
like
total
Robin.
Conspiracy theorist, wasn't he? I think it was someone else.
I mean, I think you might be thinking about the conspiracy theories that he's embroiled in. That
maybe
like,
I am
the
thinking
faked
about
moon
that.
landing stuff. People often say that he filmed the faked moon landings, which is obviously bullshit. And then the rocket imagery in The Shining is his attempt to confess that he faked the moon landings, even though it's some bollocks.
Yeah, actually, I think I might just be responding to, because I've definitely seen that Shining movie where people read a million things into his thing. I think it looks like other people have read an awful lot into it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've not read into his thoughts on it, but he strikes me as someone who would find conspiracies tedious and silly, personally. But I might be way off base with that.
But that's the thing. So this whole orgy scene, right? It's like it's supposed to be really creepy, and everyone's silently staring.
I think it
and all
is
that.
really creepy.
Well, no, I just thought it was stupid because it's just a load of twats dressing up in cloaks, going, "Oh, we're going to our secret meeting, and we're going to pretend to be creepy to scare someone."
But that's scary.
No, it's not. It's pathetic.
I think a load of twats who get silly ideas in their head is scary. More so now than ever. But this is why I find the Blair Witch Project and witches in general I find terrifying in films, because it doesn't matter if magic isn't real. If there's some cackling, insane old crone who's gone out into the woods who's willing to cut your tongue out in your sleep because she believes it's magic, that is fucking terrifying. It doesn't matter if it's an idiot playing dress up or real. And I think that extends here. I think Tom Cruise massively underestimates the shit that he's getting himself in, because he doesn't know what he's going to ultimately, and he doesn't realize that there's as much potential for danger when he does it. He thinks he might get a slap on the wrist and thrown out, but I think it very quickly becomes, oh, this is a bit more serious than all that, and it's actually quite scary, personally.
I thought some of it was kind of creepy, but then I'm reading into it that it is a secret organization sort of thing and not all just made up. So I just read it as being very real. And I think in real life, that kind of thing, I'm sure these kinds of orgy things with, rich, influential people probably have happened at some point in time. But Yeah, probably not to this extent.
They're exactly like that, but you just have Louis Theroux in the corner with like a camera, just walking around asking people.
Is this something
questions.
you do every day? Do you have sex with people every day?
I just listened to his episode with of his podcast he's doing at the minute with an ex-Scientologist. They were talking all about Tom Cruise.
Oh, really?
And how he's treated within Scientology. How there's like, you know, they have the Celebrity Center in LA.
Yeah.
And there's like an open area the public can go in, and then there's like a secret bit backstage for the celebrities. Apparently there's like a super secret bit that only Tom Cruise is allowed in.
It's just his wanking closet.
It wasn't quite that bad. I think John Travolta's probably allowed in there as well, but it's like you have to be like primo celebrity to be approved for
Can Jason Lee
the
get
other
in
bit.
there?
So no.
Can
Like
Giovanni
Kirstie
Ribisi
Alley
get
can't
in
get in there. Jenna Elfman isn't allowed, but like Tom Cruise, that's his bit.
Do you think there was a day in like 2009 when John Travolta like went in and his key didn't work, and it's like, what's happened? It's like, come on.
Oh,
You know, like Tom Cruise, I know he's ethically speaking, it's a tricky one, but you know, I don't think I think this is quite an uninteresting, boring take, but
Cold take.
I like Tom Cruise, and I can't help but like him as an actor and a performer.
Yeah.
He has that movie star X factor, that charisma. It's completely phony and insincere in that real kind of Hollywood way, but you put him in a role like this as a really unpleasant, insincere knobhead or Rain Man or something that calls for it, and it just works. And I really like Tom Cruise, to be honest, and I kind of wish I didn't, because he's obviously involved in some really horrible shit.
Yeah, well, I do think that it's like...
Oh, and also, he was totally in the right yelling at everyone on the set of Mission Impossible, and all the people going, "Oh, you wouldn't let your boss talk to you like that." Can fuck off. Of course you would.
well, there was an awful lot of...
Putting the entire production at risk.
Someone sent me an audio recording of L. Ron Hubbard losing his shit, and it was eerily similar. Like, the cadence, the intonation, it was definitely channeling some kind of Scientology. I think he was right to... Well, was he? No, actually. There is a whole element of Scientology and Jehovah's Witnesses and all that kind of stuff where that's how you show people up, that's how you shame them and all this kind of stuff, and I think that was seeping into that.
Maybe so, but, you know, ultimately, he's not just the actor on that film, he's the producer on that film.
Yeah, I
And
know.
I do think if someone's, as he said, you know, someone's completely flouting safety protocol that does ultimately put lives in danger and the production in danger, and the world's watching this production to see how it goes down with regards to the safety protocol, I think he was pretty justified. Obviously, I wasn't there.
I don't know what the infraction was exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think two people were just stood next to each other within 6 feet or something.
I do.
Apparently, it was a repeated breaking of the rules, though. I believe it was.
Yeah.
I would love to pit angry Tom Cruise against angry Christian Bale. Do you think that's something we could arrange one day?
What, in an audio mashup?
You're back there in Hollywood making movies right now because of us!
You're unbelievable, man.
Because they believe in us and what we're doing!
You're unfucking believable.
I'm on the phone with every studio at night!
Oh, good for you!
Insurance company!
And how was it?
Producer!
Oh, da-da-da-da.
They're looking at us and using us to make their movies. We are creating thousands of jobs,
Look, G, you got fucking something to say to this prick?
I just to sort of agree with you, Saul, I think, yeah, I really like Tom Cruise. I think he's got that Hollywood star X factor, and I do think he's actually a very good actor when he really wants to be. He also does seem to be always acting in his real life as well. I think it feels like he's completely lost any sense of self because he's been performing for so long. So, but yeah, I do feel like if I knew him, like if I was working with him, he'd probably get on my tits because I think that
completely.
fake sincerity would not work on me particularly because it would annoy me. But when he'd be going like, "Oh, hey, Alan, I know your kids' names now," and he's like asking about your family and that, it's like, fuck off, mate.
I know, I'd hate it. I completely buy that he's incredibly charming and most people love it. And
yeah, if you meet him for 30 seconds, it's amazing.
My girlfriend met him for 30 seconds and said he was like the loveliest man in the world.
Of course.
He would be. That's how they get you.
Yeah, I think most people would go for it, but I agree. I'm like you. I don't like it when people are nice. I just think, what's your game? What's driving? What weird game are you playing? And the thing with Tom Cruise is, it is completely insincere. Or maybe not insincere, because I think he probably does want to be nice and want people to like him, but it's that Hollywood phony.
Well, there was even in this film as the character.
Yeah.
When he went into work and the woman working behind the reception or whatever, he was like, "Oh, hello, Susan, good morning." And I went, "Fuck off, you insincere prick." Like, even that, like, in character, it just because it was Tom Cruise, I think, it was just like, it just came across as, like, gross. It was because he said the name. Like, and just go, "Oh, hello." He was
that's the trick. That's what they all do in LA.
I know, but you say that like it's like that classic psychological trick. It makes people think you've connected with them, but like it always works. But I'll tell you what, with me particularly, I get this quite a lot when I'm on a job or doing something, because obviously my name isn't really Alan. So if someone comes up to me and calls me Thomas, they've obviously just got my name off a list. They don't know me at all, and they're going, "Oh, hey Tom, how are you doing?" And like, you've lost me there, mate. You're faking. It's like, because of my fake name, anyone who calls me Thomas, or Tom particularly, it's just like, who the fuck are you? Because you obviously don't know me, because no one calls me that. So like, why are you trying to be friendly to me?
Your ex-girlfriend used to call you Thomas.
Well, that was different. She knew me from a long time ago, and I told her to call me that because it's.
I'm sure Tom Cruise has an awful lot going on personally, but I don't want to say anything because I know he's not going to come after me. Well, anyway, do you think that
come after us, Tom? Come at us, seriously, like sue us.
Do you think this was because they did divorce, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, not too long after this film? Do you think it led to some kind of degrading of their relationship? Because I really feel like if you have Stanley Kubrick, and apparently he would like hold these, just the three of them in a room where he really said that he wanted to know about their relationship, and Nicole Kidman said it wasn't exactly couples counseling because there was no counseling, but they would just like talk about these aspects of their relationship, and Stanley would just take it all in. And she said it was probably really unhelpful to not have any kind of working through of it. It was more just them coming out with these issues, him running off and writing them down, and then they're like, oh, okay.
Well, I think their relationship troubles really enrich the film. I think you really do get a lot of that in here. I don't know. I mean, obviously we'll never know, but my instinctive read on it is that they wouldn't have lasted either way. Perhaps, if anything, they stayed together throughout the production to kind of keep things together, and might have just broken up on more amicable terms earlier.
But
Maybe
bear in mind
this
that
perpetuated it, and they would have lasted for another few years and then broken up. Who knows? But I doubt the film is solely responsible for their failed marriage.
They'd been together 10 years, but presumably in that it's like Tom Cruise like, "Oh, I've got to go make this film, it's shooting in Britain, I'll be back in 3 months." Like, that sort of thing is really healthy for a relationship, I think, to have time apart.
Oh, hey, Nicole.
Whereas now they're spending all their time together.
They were, live in America. They're away from home for 2-3 years filming this with Stanley Kubrick, who must have just been for whatever kind of genius he might be. And I do love a good deal of the man's work, but I'm not a worshipper, and he sounds like he must have been an absolute arse to work with. I can't imagine. It was like something he made Tom Cruise walk through a door 48 times, and it was driving Cruise insane because he wasn't giving him any direction. It was like, well, what do you want me to do? No, just keep doing it. And it's like, that would just be so infuriating. And for 3 years as well, and to be playing these kinds of scenes on screen over and over again on a set, and it's bringing your own couple relationship to the film as well. It must have just been an absolute nightmare.
I think Kubrick, from what I can gather, it depends who you are. And I think some people have a really positive experience, or had, I should say, a really positive experience working with him. And he was very friendly and affable. And then I think other people, he just, they had a horrible time. And I think it just depended what he wanted to get out of them. Malcolm McDowell said he was lovely and considered him a friend, and then he just completely ghosted him after the film was finished, which is in itself a horrible thing to do, really. But, and Peter Sellers obviously got along with him well enough to work with him repeatedly. And But then on the other hand, you have your Shelley Duvals, and I imagine Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman got something closer to that, where he was really poking at the wounds to try and get something, on screen. So yeah, I bet they had a horrible time.
Do you know what actually jumped out at me about the film? Which I guess I've kind of seen this before, but so long ago I couldn't remember. How little Nicole Kidman is actually in it. She's in the beginning, the whole setup, and then he has his whole little adventure, and she just comes back in the last 10 minutes for the kind of emotional payoff. And it works, but it was much less than I thought.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys, just to go on another sort of real life tangent, as it's a Valentine special. We've talked a lot about sex. I want to talk about the opposite of sex. Children.
Ooh.
Because
there is a child in this film, isn't there? I forgot about that.
Yeah, they've got a kid, and it kind of just lends a bit of extra weight to their relationship. It doesn't really mean anything. But I was just curious about you guys because, we're all in our 30s now. We're of an age where you should be making those decisions about whether you want a family and all that sort of stuff. And like I've come out the other end of it. I'm very anti-children on a whole, generally, not just in my life, but in the world. And I think they should just sort of generally be stopped. But I appreciate that is not a common view.
You're like a Roald Dahl character, aren't you, Ellen?
But I guess I wanted to ask you guys are like 30, 31 or whatever you are now. Are you thinking about that? I feel like Sol, it doesn't particularly want kids, but one day he'll meet a woman who wants them and he'll just be like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then it'll just be like, he'll just go along.
I will say I'm very consciously aware of the fact that
you're getting older.
The clock is ticking in real terms. I mean, I know as a man we can just have kids into
as men that clock ticks a lot slower.
But to be a reasonable age for a kid, I think I'm very aware now that it's like but probably within the next 10 years would be.
Do you have any urges to do it? Do you have like that kind of paternal instinct where you go,
no, not at all. Cool. The idea is absolutely fucking terrifying, and I couldn't. Certainly, my life as it stands right now, it's not even close to considerable. But let's say my life was sorted out, coronavirus is done with. I don't know. I in theory, I like the idea of having. I like the idea of all the nice bits that go with it. So I guess having had a kid that's grown up. But then, in real terms, the whole like, oh, you've got to have a kid and you've got to be responsible for it. I can't even, the thought of having a pet that I'm responsible for is too much for me right now. Even a fucking goldfish, but that's because, I care too much about giving it a proper life. I wouldn't just put it in a bowl and leave it. But I mean, look, in theory, I'm against it, and I think people shouldn't have kids nearly as much as they do, and a lot of people shouldn't be parents who are. So I think I'm kind of the same sort of wavelength as you for the most part. But I'm not. I don't know. I'll probably just get to an age where it's unrealistic and it'll never happen, and then I'll kind of be sad about it in my later years.
Well,
can die on my deathbed lonely and depressed. I mean, that's all I really worry about is getting to like age 80 and dying and just being alone.
See, I'm not worried about that. I'm like, yeah, cool, that'll be fine. Because I'm all right with that.
To be honest, I don't know what I'm bothered about.
Hopefully have friends, I'll have people in my life, but in fact, I feel like I will be connected to more people than I would be if I just like stuck my life to one person for 50 years. Like my parents don't really have any friends, they've just got each other and they're kind of stuck together now. It's like, well, we better just see it out to the bitter end because fuck it, what else have we got? And, I think they do care for each other still, but, it's like...
Hi, Alan's mum.
Calvin, kids?
No. The next nice step would be dogs. I would like to have lots of dogs. And if I were to ever have a child, I think it would potentially be in another, 15 years when I'm late 40s, and it would be adopting Probably.
Well, I assumed that. I didn't think you were gonna
Well, you
have an
can go to the
operation.
efforts of spending an awful lot of money to have a biological child if you are in a
You're
same-sex
surrogate,
relationship.
Yeah, you go surrogate.
But that's expensive, and I have no kind of instinct. I would love to have. I've had a hamster since last June, and I really love her. She's a lovely little hamster, and I think I'd probably be really unsufferable if I had dogs. But dogs are more where my mind is at.
But that's practice, isn't it? That's like you get the dogs and then
Maybe.
like, okay, better get knocked up now.
So everyone listening's really randy right now. They can't wait to stop listening to this and go have a little
Protected
play.
sex.
Well, shall we wrap up? Because we have been
Always wrap up. Be safe.
No, I meant on the film. The final scene is kind of Tom Cruise goes back to Nicole Kidman and tells her about everything.
Yeah, she's found the mask.
Yes.
He knows that she's going to be like, what's this fucking mask about? And he just
Oh
comes
man, do you
clean
know
about
what?
everything.
I really was. I can't even pay attention because I took that, and I know it was deliberately ambiguous at first. I took that as, oh my god, they've like broken into his house and put the mask there as a warning.
Well, I think it's meant to play both ways. I think you're meant to be, shit, is the mask there and she's dead?
Yeah, but I had not thought of the other way. I had completely not thought of the other way that you've just mentioned, that she's found it and she's left it there as like a kind of like, well, as soon as you get in, we're going to have a conversation, young man.
Well, that's why he starts breaking down and crying as she stirs. Because I think he thinks, fuck, she's dead and they've broken in and done that. And then she moves and he's like, oh no, she found it and put it there. And that's why he starts crying.
But I genuinely hadn't considered the ambiguity. I just thought, they'd put it there as a warning and he realised that he's going to have to just shut up and keep his mouth shut. And,
You see, there you go.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, actually. I just hadn't seen it until you said it. My loss.
He spills everything to her, much like she did at the start, but we don't watch it happen. And then they're out buying Christmas presents and she basically says, look, thanks for being honest. Minds wander. We're both going through that. I guess we still love each other, so we should probably have a go of it. But let's be more intimate. Let's have sex. Let's fuck. And then the credits roll. And I don't know. I really like this film. I think it's great. I love all the character drama and the interplay, and I love all that stuff. I think it's a really nice exploration of themes and ideas, which obviously you don't.
Do you want to rate it? Do you want to see as you're kind of giving a bit of a
yeah, because it's Valentine's Day and we're being sexy.
Yeah,
I know not everyone who's into ASMR is into it for sexual reasons, but some people are. So I think we should do like sexy ASMR.
It's just a coincidence that all those ASMR people are 22-year-old women, sexy women.
My girlfriend's really into ASMR for the non-sexual reasons, and I overhear it from time to time, and honestly, the amount of times I've like burst out laughing. That once she like started playing it and it wasn't like synced up properly to her headphones or whatever, so it started playing out the phone loudly, and the woman on the video said, "There's been an incident." like it was a fucking policeman on the end of the phone or something telling you about a car crash. It was so weird.
Yeah, I must admit I don't get that at all. But
Well, yeah, it doesn't trigger the sensory whatever in me. So I guess if it did, I'd be into it. But I like it when Billie Eilish does all the in her music. I was reading a thing the other day about how a lot of modern music seems to be going into this weird ASMR genre, like influence. Billie Eilish being the most obvious one, but there being quite a few of them. It's quite interesting. Yeah, so I guess I'll go in the middle. We'll do a compliment we'll do an insult sandwich where you two both slate the film and I'm nice about it in the middle.
Shall I go first then? If we're the
ASMR it up, Calvin. Whisper it into the mic.
My score or just my final thoughts?
All of it.
As I said earlier on, I'm not a big fan. Should I do it like that? Is that going to pick up right? Can you hear me?
I can hear it fine, yeah.
I've got a horn.
I was just amazed at how effective it was. Calvin, you should do ASMR videos on your Patreon.
I probably should.
Just do Bond. Talk about James Bond.
Calvin, have you got an OnlyFans yet?
A woman. What? No. Right. Okay. As I said earlier on, I'm not that big a fan of Stanley Kubrick. I love some of his films. This is not one of the ones that I love. Overall, it's lacking the kind of vibe that I need from him to really get something out of it. A la Clockwork Orange or The Shining. I even love Dr. Strangelove. But I can't connect with the characters in this film because of Kubrick's trademark coldness, and I think this is a story where you really need to connect with the people in order to get something out of it. 5 out of 10.
I don't know if I could whisper for that long.
It's really tough, actually.
Okay. It's hard, isn't it? It's very difficult. I suppose I feel similarly about this film as you do, Calvin, but for me, I suppose I do find somewhere to connect or latch onto the characters and their experiences and what they're going through. And therefore it works for me as a kind of collection of ideas and exploration of a time or place in a relationship. And I also think it's quite beautifully shot and put together for the most part, although I do wish the edit had been tightened up a bit. So I wish I liked it more. It's one of those films I kind of find myself wanting to like more than I do like. I give it a very strong 8 out of 10.
That's lower than I thought it was going to be from you, actually.
Okay, so do I have to do that as well then?
Yeah.
Okay. This film is very long. It's very long and hard and really, really boring. And I think if you cut the whole Nicole Kidman bit out of it, it would be quite an interesting 90-minute mystery thriller. And you'd lose all the relationship stuff and the deeper meaning about relationship and emotions. And that would make it a lot more entertaining, if not artistically resonant. And so I didn't hate it. But ultimately, it just all meant nothing to me. And I couldn't relate to any of the characters because they actually cared about each other. And I don't do that. So I gave it a 5 out of 10.
That was very effective, Alan, I must say. I felt shudders.
Your ASMR voice is very similar to your Doc Brown from Back to the Future impression. Dial up the volume, and they'd be pretty much the same.
I'll have you know, some people find my voice very sexy, actually.
Michael J. Fox? No. What's her name? What's the one out of...
Elizabeth Shue.
The one out...
Oh no, Mary Steenburgen.
That's the one, Mary Steenburgen. Oh dear. What sexy story should we go out on?
I was on a job once on a set, and one of the other guys, one of the other extras, who was just, some of them are a bit mental, and he told us all this story, which he'd obviously just heard to me. It wasn't like anything he had first-hand information about it, but he told us it very sincerely. That Tom Cruise has these big guys who are security guards, and then sometimes he'll go and hide, and if they find him, then they fuck him. But he told us, which is obviously not true, but. The guy telling this story was just told it so sincerely, as if that is something that would happen. It's it's Hollywood, isn't it? And that's just sort of what celebrities get up to. And I just wondered, were they told this when they were given the job? Was that part of the interview process, or is that get sprung on them?
I'm gonna fucking burst.
They find him and then well, you have to fuck me now. What? So that's Tom Cruise. For the record, I don't believe that story.
Does he always hide in the bed then, presumably? Or under a cushion on the sofa?
He's hiding in the jacuzzi.
I just had a mental image of him because he's so small anyway, of him just like hiding in like the bin or in a cupboard.
He's not that small. He's not fucking Kenny Baker. He's like 5'9" or something.
Oh, Alan's got a nerve.
It's because Calvin's so much taller than me. It intimidates me.
How tall are you, Alan? And how tall is Tom Cruise?
I think he's like 5'9" or something. He's not actually as short.
He's
as
average
you think.
height, I believe.
Although I don't know if that's actually true.
I need to look this up.
Because obviously he's always got those Al Pacino like heels on, so he's like 2 inches taller than he actually.
Oh, he's 1.7 meters. What's that in feet?
Oh, nobody knows what that is.
5.5'6", something like that.
Oh yeah, just slightly below 5'6". Yeah, ever so slightly.
Short. That is short. Okay, I take it back. That's pretty short.
What are you, Alan? 5'7".
I'm 5'11" in shoes. I'm like 5'10" and 3/4. So I say 5'11" because it makes me feel like more of a man.
You're about 6 foot, aren't you, tall?
I'm exactly 6 foot when I've measured myself, and I don't dare measure myself again in case I got it slightly wrong the first time, which was probably about 20 years ago.
That's like me. Right? I took a Mensa IQ test when I was 12, and the score was so high. I'm never doing an IQ test again, and I can always just say this is my IQ.
Yeah, but I think I'm 6 foot. I certainly think of myself as a 6 foot man. I'm certainly 6 foot in shoes, as Alan says.
And you're what, 6'3", Calvin? You're quite stocky as well. You're like a real man's man.
Am I?
No.
All right, yeah, I was going to say, no, I'm 6'1".
And scrawny. Perhaps you could give us some insight into the gay world there, Calvin. But I've seen in the heterosexual world, in my experience, a lot of women are very touchy about men being taller than them, and vice versa. Men are they like men to be taller than them.
Yeah, like man has to be taller than them, otherwise it's a problem.
And then vice versa, like men don't like women who are taller than them. So if you're like 6'1" and you're a woman, like it can cause some problems. Or if you're a little fella, and it's weird. That is a kind of like just, you know, men are supposed to be bigger, and so if you're not, it doesn't feel right in some way, I guess.
I don't think I've ever slept with someone taller than me. Have you, Alan?
I don't think so. Honestly, it wouldn't be like a big deal breaker with me. I do like people who are smaller than me. Like, I attract to that because because I'm quite a stocky guy. I like big guy anyway, so I like kind of playing up to that. But it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me. I could still. I
wouldn't have an issue with it at all. I do remember I went on a date with someone once who was 6 foot something, certainly taller than I was, and I didn't think I'd even notice it, but I was very aware of it when we were like walking outside after having a drink.
When you had to stand on the yellow pages to kiss her.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame it didn't really go anywhere, but she was turned out more into the Christianity than I was anticipating. So it would have meant, a long relationship before anything happened. But so I think we had like a little kiss on the lips. I think it was. I've kissed someone taller than me, but I've not done anything else.
But you'll see it on Tinder all the time and stuff like that. They'll say, you must
like
be over 5'10" because I'm that's how tall I am. Like, and you see that a lot, which it feels a little bit body fascist in the 2020s.
Oh, it is completely. But
because when I put on my Tinder, like don't be over 9 stone, it's like that's apparently offensive. But yeah, Calvin, I assume there's sort of similar dynamics going on in the gay world. I bet there's people who are bothered by that stuff.
Oh, there's so much fetishization of all kinds of physical types, yeah. So it's never come up for me necessarily. I suppose I've always sort of dated people relatively similar in height to me. But that's a logistical thing, isn't it? You don't want them, some angles might not work. I
was with a woman once who was so short, like 5 foot, that we couldn't do a proper 69, because she was too far away from my face. Like I had to kind of reach, and it was too much of a strain on the neck.
I mean, I've done that where you have to kind of lean forward. It's a bit of strain on your back, but it's never been much of an issue.
You just can't do it for very long. That's true.
I must say, it is weird, isn't it, when you never really think about the physical logistics of it until you're there with someone and it is like, oh, this isn't quite compatible. Like these pieces don't quite fit. We're trying to jam a jigsaw piece in that's got like an extra corner. It's what it feels like. I can't think of any specific instances of that, but I definitely have encountered that where I think they must have been smaller rather than too tall.
I've got a story to tell you, but I'm not telling you it when we're recording.
Ooh, okay.
Not for my own benefit, but just because it's just a bit too personal in terms of...
Should we end the episode there, and then Calvin and I can go off and enjoy this salacious bit of gossip?
Yes, that sounds
And leave the
ideal.
listeners wanting more. Thanks for joining us for Sexy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Yes.
If you like this choice of film, if you want to have your say, if you wished we'd done something smuttier or whatever, head over to our Patreon account, Dim Returns. What is it? Patreon.com/Dim Returns, where you can sign up and get access to a whole load of Diminisodes, such as the one where Alan and I chat with Calvin about having coronavirus.
It was a harrowing one, that. God.
Or the excellent James Bond little quiz that we just played about people on Twitter, which was
fun.
very good fun. I think that's going to turn out really well. And you can take part in polls to select future episodes as well. We've got a load of votes coming up. We've got currently we're running a big vote to select a film that we've already covered on the show to look at again for our 250th episode as a kind of retrospective.
And do come back next week when we will be doing a very special episode in which I overtake the show to plug my new podcast. And we will be covering a film spin-off of a TV show. I will not say any more. Ooh, tease.
All right.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
I forgot about that. Yeah.